What's happening right now in terms of censorship, we shouldn't be surprised by the fact that this has all really happened before. And so we can learn a bit from history. The bad news is we, the people, actually lost in a lot of these previous battles. The good news is there's a lot more people awake and a lot more connectivity. So there's various times in history. A lot of the stuff that you see now has happened before, only right now it's like happening on steroids. If you look back, you can see in the 1800s, obviously, you had the printing press. And the printing press gave way to a lot of independent media sources. Those independent media sources are the same thing that's happening today. But the thing of it is that all those little independent media presses, they disappeared through capitalism. Now, these little independent presses, they were a thorn in the side for the elite. What these little presses did is they fostered an alternative way of looking at the world and a whole different value system than what the elites wanted to have in place so that they can control the populace. So they came up with a solution and they tried to squash them, but it didn't work. Now, this is from Manufacturing Consent, and there's Noam Chomsky. Now, some of you might know Noam Chomsky, and immediately you turn off because he's probably considered more liberal than not. However, his ideas and his analysis on media are spot on. So we're going to take from here and get a few things that I think are pretty darn relevant for today. Just going to present some ideas on how we can basically fight back in a way that makes sense right now in our technological age. But we can go back and see where the failures were, and that way not collectively relive that experience. Basically, there's a propaganda model that Chomsky lays out, and there's 4 different filters. I'm not going to bore you with all the 4 filters, but I am going to pull some different elements. One of them being how they tried to squash the independent media sources before. The result was an attempt to squelch the working class media by libel laws and prosecutions, by requiring an expensive security bond as a condition for publication, and by imposing various taxes designed to drive out radical media by raising their costs. Guess what? These tactics didn't work, but guess what did? Capitalism. It wasn't done all at once, but it sure did work pretty well. One of the major ways that they drove out the media sources is something that they're doing today. And that has to do with making access more difficult. Early on, the smaller printing presses were actually fairly inexpensive to set up. But as time went on, it became more and more expensive. And then capitalism came in the form of advertisers. If you can't get advertisers, you can't really pay for your rag, right? Now, these little independent media sources didn't have what we have today, which is a connectivity. And I believe we can actually go through and effectively help these small producers. And I'm going to show you a couple of different examples and why I think it's critically important that we move our funds away from the corporate big tech and a lot of these big corporations like Netflix and move it into supporting a lot of these smaller creators. It's through this we can create pockets of resistance that can influence all of us on a larger level. This connectivity is huge. But remember, these small printing presses didn't make it because they didn't have the capital. It was getting expensive. And then an interesting filter is flack. Now, flack refers to negative responses to media statement or program. If you understand what goes into, let's say, creating a video or any sort of piece where you kind of research different things to make it interesting and also to bring in solid sources, this takes a lot of time. Not only does it take a lot of time, but your sources of information can sometimes be wrong. And that basically results in flack. Now, the term for this, flack, is just getting blowback from different people. It's much like, the protest movements in the 60s and 70s and COINTELPRO. If you look that up, some of the CIA or FBI would actually infiltrate some of these protest organizations and then seek to divide them from within. And it looked like normal people, but they really weren't. So it's the same sort of idea. This disinformation that we get everywhere we go, that's obviously by design. Now, more recently, you'll see Charlie Ward and Mel K, and they came out with some different ideas. Now, some of these ideas are going to be truthful, but within those ideas is disinformation. Also, within all this information is a bit of code, meaning that information is there to be decoded by those in the know. So obviously, one of the things you need to do is not just take it at full value, but really look at it and noodle around the ideas. The truth isn't going to be laid out for you as much as you'd like to think the media does. It's just not the same. Our information and disinformation are intertwined along with some coding, and it's revealing all that by going through and kind of connecting the dots in different ways. I put it out to you, though, that in the past, we've had the same things happen before, and we've lost. We've lost because of these propaganda filters, of this manipulation. But it was through the elements of capitalism. So really, the freedom from this then comes from capitalism itself also. Now, capitalism can be used for a tool to subvert, but it also can be used as a tool for freedom. And I think there are a couple other elements that you may consider to kind of make this a thing all happen. A lot of that has to do with choosing to move from being isolated to being connected a lot more regularly into these pockets of connectivity. So you're not trying to connect necessarily to a whole bunch of people. You're connecting to a core group with the same values. And you're also taking your money to say, I'm not going to watch Netflix. Instead, I'm going to support these smaller creators, these creators who are actually bringing me helpful information rather than just trying to program my mind or manipulate me through entertainment. I know it's a harder road to take because a lot of people like being entertained by Netflix or like being entertained by these other things or pulling their money from other places to support these creators, but that's part of the way we keep our freedom. The way they killed off the printing press in the past could happen again. These filters are already happening. You've got flack. It already happens in abundance. You have pulling advertising dollars, basically demonetizing videos and making it much harder for people to, make money from their creations and keep it going. Because if you need to spend that time creating, making a buck another way, you're not going to be creating as much content. And in some cases, you won't create any at all. So I think they're using a lot of the same filters, access to information, making it an us versus them in terms of experts, and producing flack, disinformation, and really making it a lot harder for independent creators to get out there and have a voice of their own. But what's key is that we have technology, and that technology allows us to connect. And once we connect, we have pockets of resistance. One of the number one reasons that what they did in the past won't work is because of you. By engaging more with those smaller creators and with connecting with like-minded people and creating pockets of resistance, basically, I think we have a place we can stand our ground a lot more effectively than if we just sit back and go, I wonder what happened to Sean Morgan. Oh, he's gone. Oh, well, they come and they go, right? You might wonder where all these creators have gone. They've gone to these alternative channels. Now, if we want to succeed and move beyond big tech and all that censorship, then we need to start engaging on those channels and effectively moving our attention away from these larger tech channels to the smaller ones. And then we need to support our independent creators. They are out there pulling together ideas and information in a way that provides different ways of looking at the world, different frameworks for which to make decisions. And it's making sure that we consciously go to those and we watch them. So rather than being fed information from, let's say, Facebook or YouTube, where you go to the main home channel and you get fed which videos to watch, you really want to go and seek out the creators that you trust and believe in. Not only support them, but actually go and watch, comment, and share their content and really make it much more effective. Now, in the description, I've got a listing of different alternatives for Facebook, for YouTube, and different ways to basically connect with other like-minded people. The independent press has made sure that a lot of people realized that their ideas, they weren't alone in this, and they could connect with others who had the same ideas. And in that sense, by not being alone, by not being isolated, they could expound upon their ideas and make valuable changes to the world we live in. There's a monopoly on ideas. The more we're able to grow these independent voices, the better off we're going to be. So we need to not only support them, but also just go to where they are rather than relying upon these main media channels. Of course, I've certainly been at fault for this. I find myself going to YouTube all of the time. So I've been trying to engage a different habit where I go to BitChute, where I go to library, where I go to all these other channels, and I'm trying to set up there as well so that when YouTube and Facebook get taken down, which eventually they will get broken up, they're just way too powerful to continue. When those get broken up, I'll still have a platform, some different platforms for which to put content out there and to basically monetize that content. There's no creator that can keep on going without monetization. A lot of people accuse content creators everywhere of, giving in to capitalism. Well, the thing of it is, it takes a lot of time to create these videos, and to make sure that you can carve out that time without being crushed by all the needs of the day, you're going to have to monetize somehow. And when you do monetize it, it becomes a bit more serious. It becomes much more viable. It's much more likely that a content creator is going to continue blogging or creating video if they get monetary compensation for it. It just makes it a lot easier to do. I had a podcast for about a year or more, talking to various artists from around the globe about their creative habits. It was an awesome experience, and I learned a lot from the different creators. But the thing of it is, at the end of the day, I ended up stopping because I needed to make money a different way. And so the show went away. If you found the ideas in this video helpful, be sure to give it a like. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you next time.